Thank you very much for coming to this session on ecocity regions. I think the current flood residing from the Yamuna as we sit in Delhi is not lost on any of us in terms of the importance of ecology and as a clear guiding principle for our economic growth. Towards that, we'd like to organize this session, and I welcome all our speakers. If I may introduce them. I must mention that we are waiting for Madam D. Tara, who's the Additional Secretary from the Ministry of Urban Affairs. She is in traffic, so she has asked us to, give her a leeway of about 10-15 minutes. So we'll start anyway. I'll introduce her when she comes in. Going around the table, I'd like to introduce Mr. Sameer Sisodia. He heads the Rainmatter Foundation, which focuses on resilient network of climate organizations and a strategic approach to funding and grant programs. Sameer's Rainmatter Foundation is also the foundation that's funding this work for us. We're working in 4 states and cities across India. So welcome, Sameer. Then I'd like to introduce Dr. Chandrani. Ma'am is an esteemed professor at the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi. And she's held positions of associate professor at National Institute of Disaster Management in the past. We look forward to hearing from you. I will await Ms. Manushi Jain. She isn't here right now. Coming to Dr. Champaka Rajagopal. She is a professor at the School of Policy and Governance at the Azim Premji University and is an independent practitioner, having worked on various aspects, including, I believe, green growth and regional planning. I'd like to introduce Ms. Olga. Welcome. She's an international climate change, disaster risk management, and sustainable urban development specialist. She's also the founding director of Unicity. Welcome. Samrat is the director of water at WRI India. And between Samrat and me, I'm Rajit Matthews as the director of urban development. We are co-running this project as sort of between water, urban development, and climate resilience. Hi, Manushi. Let me introduce you as well. Welcome. Manushi is the co-founder and director of the Sponge Collaborative, an interdisciplinary firm, I believe a young and upcoming firm in Chennai, I believe, and Bangalore. Yes, welcome. Thank you to all the panelists who've come here. We'll start with the presentation to sort of set context on what are we doing in the ecocity region space. I'll ask my colleague Neha Lal to start the presentation.
The presentation will briefly talk about our initiative on Thriving Ecocity Regions, why this is important, what is our theory of change, what are our impact regions where we work, and the way forward we sort of think of in terms of scaling these efforts and initiatives. WRI, as Rajit had mentioned before, WRI India joined hands with the Rainmatter Foundation to launch Thriving Ecocity Regions in January 2023, where we're looking to nudge business as usual approaches to urbanization, be able to build pathways that can accelerate transformative urban change, and also build possibilities and collaborative spaces and dialogues and platforms for these emergent challenges. We see ecocity regions as ecologically resilient and economically productive regions that uphold the principles of regenerative development and social well-being for all. Why ecocity regions? I think all of us in this room in Delhi today are aware of why we need this and why now. We continue to sort of grapple in a post-facto fashion with the current challenges of urban trajectories that we see. Hence, we need to move along to a paradigm where our planning, thinking, and action is no longer divorced from the realities that are currently upon us and that continue to emerge. We need strategic, spatial, and economic planning that is able to think of and link land use and transit, strategic projects, and economic potential through sustainable urban planning and design practices, be able to mainstream climate change and resilience within our paradigms of action and instruments, as well as build cities that are more inclusive for all of us. Our theory of change basically emanates from 2 work streams. The first one being able to sort of push the envelope on investment in action through change in policy, plans, and projects. And the second being opportunities for strategic steering We hope to achieve these through a range of activities under the EcoCity project, as we call it. The first being able to build, better instruments of change. So reviewing existing policies, plans, and projects, being able to give technical and design support to our partners, which is underpinned by solid and evidence-based research, analytics, and mapping. Be able to understand what are the current gaps and needs of states, urban practitioners, and change makers today. Be able to not only help them through technical support, but also inform them through our research and mapping. Be able to bring together different kinds of voices in through events, convenings, and deliberations, but also be able to make this language a little bit more accessible for all of us across different stratas and scales. We hope to inform, influence, and empower different kinds of interest groups and stakeholders through a range of outputs, through which we hope to achieve better uptake of climate resilient and equitable growth approaches, increase in the opportunities and platforms for collaboration and also the equality, adoption of ecocity-based institutional arrangements, by which we may mean a better bench strength and sort of technical underpinning for existing urban decision makers, and acceptance of a common language on ecocity regions among stakeholders. Through these outcomes, we hope to eventually move towards building for 5 city regions, pushing them along an economic and ecological continuum of regenerative growth pathways. We have been trying to push towards this trajectory through 4 out of these 5 city regions, and the 5th one will begin soon. These are some of our impact regions: Jammu and Kashmir, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, and Punjab. While we work on multiple scales, I'm just showing this for just to show the spread, and I'll speak about some of the illustrations of the kind of work that we're doing in these geographies. The first one being Punjab, where we're looking to understand what kind of gaps currently exist in their institutional capacity, empower them, and be able to sort of give them that knowledge that they can sort of then practice and take key decisions from. For instance, the work that we did with them on heat mapping, by being able to sort of understand what are the heat islands in the city, they were able to do better in terms of city greening initiatives and actually institutionalize these through greening guidelines at the state level. Looking at the Jalandhar case, which is where we're working with the Municipal Corporation of Jalandhar, this is the Kala Sangan drain which flows through the city. Currently, it's just a deluge of solid waste, something that they want to turn around, and something that the solid waste problem being a big issue for them at the city scale. Here, we're trying to help push this along through focused initiatives and engagement to be able to implement and harness nature-based solutions and revive not just the channel, but also the relationship of the neighboring communities and the city as a whole with the drain. Moving on to Uttar Pradesh, where we're not only looking to sort of shape the regional planning process, but be able to visualize cities or centers of growth through their diversity and density of jobs, but be able to see what happens when these cities concentrate economies, infrastructure, and people, and what kind of ecological vulnerabilities underpin these big concentrators and activity generators. We've been able to make space for more climate positive dialogues through various participations, events, and helping them along for better sort of mainstreaming of resilience language and understanding in their upcoming policy and planning instruments. Another interesting case comes from our work with Srinagar in Jammu and Kashmir, where we're working with the SMRDA, the Srinagar Metropolitan Region Development Authority, which is our state partner. Srinagar is a very interesting case because it's an intermontane valley, which is sandwiched between the Pir Panjal and the Greater Himalayas, a valley that is facing very high seismic and flooding risk and very unique and fragile ecosystem. So what we're hoping to do is to build more ecologically sensitive assessment practices to be able to address an upcoming regional plan for 2050. We want locational challenges and potentials to take center stage when we're thinking of regional scales. For instance, this map shows the red area that you see here is the built up that was flooded or impacted with the floods with 20% of the built up area in the SMRDA region being impacted out of the whole valley. So understanding cities will no longer be about just jurisdictions or traditional sort of limitations, but about understanding impact areas and the relationship of cities, quote unquote cities, in terms of the region where they sit and the region that they influence. Another interesting case is Delhi, where we see that this is quite an opportune moment. We're trying to see what kind of a relationship the river has with itself, its own sort of smaller channels, drainages, and with the city. Our work is to comprehensively map and analyze what is the length and breadth of Yamuna, what is the exposure, and how we can rejuvenate some of these areas to be able to sort of appreciate a resource that we've almost turned away from. The idea to sort of build upon these four states is to take this conversation forward towards a scale which in one way builds up to the national language on ecocity regions, but also devolves to become a more common language across different kinds of groups. We hope this discussion will be a stepping stone towards that direction. I'm just going to open this with the two tracks that we have also sort of spoken about in our CK agenda, and handing back for the next presentation by Samir.
Hi, I'm Samir from the Rain Matter Foundation, and we started looking at the climate problem as a broad umbrella and how it intersects with everything we do, our choices in planning, our choices in food systems, our choices in livelihoods, the construct of our economy. This was about 2.5 years ago, and when we got to the urban problem, we actually hit a roadblock because we didn't know what to do with it. So the urban intersection with climate change was a very complex one. There is already talk across the world of scope 2, scope 3 emissions. We are grappling with scope 1 itself in our cities. We don't have data for our cities. We don't understand. Our city's problem is framed in terms of what we are offering for the city. But there's also a problem of the city's responsibility towards its hinterland. Right? So the climate problem has hit already, right? Especially since 2022, it's been accelerating. Now, what is our response to it? What changes do we need to make to it, right? And how do we even think of the city problem? So the question we started with, and we had a few debates with a few people, including folks in this room, was about do we want to solve the urban problem at all, right? Because the urban problem is really a problem of the externalities that the cities represents today. So the conversation very quickly went to what is our imagination of a city. Maybe a couple of 100 years ago, the city looked like that first picture that you see up there. Today, it looks more like the second one if you are lucky. It also looks like a lot of migration from the first picture to the second picture today. A lot of the city problem is actually a very dynamic problem of people moving from rural spaces to urban spaces. And can you ignore the reasons why they migrate, right? Is that not part of the city problem? How can we just solve the city problem in the city, right? Does the city bear a responsibility only to its residents, to its daily migrants? Bangalore, I think, has almost 8 to 10% people coming in on a daily basis. They don't actually stay there, but they pass through the city on a daily basis and go back home. Does it have a responsibility towards, all the people who migrate from picture 1 to picture 2, right? And the other interesting thing we found was there was very little consensus on this imagination. Like this morning, we were discussing the city in terms of the built area, in terms of the urban, peri-urban, and then of course the rural. But in terms of population, but is that all a city is? Is that only a function of the amount of farmland we see or don't see around us as we travel? Right? So I was asking Reggie this question: say, if you make this peri-urban thing happen, can you imagine a case where urban local body at the periphery of the city actually wants to be a panchayat? Right? What are the characteristics of a city? Why would you want to be A or B or C? What goes with it? What comes with it? Is what trade are you making? Right? So I think we don't have a consensus on this when you speak to multiple organizations, multiple stakeholders. So that's one consensus we think needs to be driven. Of course, toxicity ends with city. And while we have the wins of a city are, we heard it this morning, is in the economic wins, the cultural wins, the agglomeration effects, the fact that many interesting people, interesting ideas intersect in a city, and that's what you want across the whole country. Right? Today, maybe a handful of cities, maybe 6, 8, 10 cities are considered attractive by most young people. Right? If you could, you would move from Coimbatore to Bangalore or Hyderabad or Pune or wherever. Right? That's the imagination today. So it's a little shameful that after 75 glorious years, we are at a place where 10,000 square kilometers of the country is attractive to 20-year-olds. Right? And in getting to those wins, the losses we have created, we're seeing something in Delhi today, but we are breathing microplastics. Our air quality is poor. Our Bangalore's traffic. There are a bunch of people from Bangalore here, so we know what we're talking about. Right? There's a bunch of, like somebody framed it beautifully. The city consumes people, energy, resources, materials from maybe a 300-kilometer radius around it, sometimes from thousands of kilometers away, and emits toxic air, toxic water, and toxic aspirations. Right? Is that the function we want the city to be? So beyond the 6 cities that are popular, the big dots out there, right, there are a lot of small dots, and this is the 2011 census. Apparently 24,000 villages are practically towns, kasbas. There are 4,500 ULBs that most people in this room are already aware of. There's another few thousand that should have been there already. So if you divide India 6.5 lakh villages by 25, you get about, roughly around 20 to 25, you get around 30,000 clusters, which maps to this brilliantly well. And these were little kingdoms and self-contained economic units at one point of time. Right? What responsibility does the city or the urban local body have towards its cluster? Because like the maps we just saw brilliantly show us, the city is part of a continuum in terms of geography, in terms of time, culture, food, seasonality. It is not an isolated unit. Right? Does the city acknowledge it? Does our planning acknowledge geography? Does it acknowledge seasons? Does it acknowledge that a river needs to expand once in a while? Right? So I think this framing of this problem, right, and which is why the whole idea of the ecocity region was very appealing, because it speaks to the relationship a place has with all the other places and people around it. And climate is a place problem, right? So how we look at the place, how we look at its relationship with other places around, I think is very key to this whole thing. So the question was, what is a climate smart city? And whatever solutions, whatever band-aids, whatever systemic changes we come up with, we need to do it 25,000 times and survive. 10% improvement on Bangalore is not going to get us there. A 10% improvement on Dehradun is not going to get us there. right? We need to really we need to throw away our current imagination and think ground up. We want the wins that come from the city, but we don't want all the toxicity. As these 25,000 places start to go up, we don't want them to learn from Bangalore for sure, right? And so on and so forth. I keep using Bangalore because I live there, but I'm sure it's true for many places. And as we create this imagination, we very often express our imagination. Please ignore the dashboard; it's just Google image copy paste. But the idea is can we express it through a shared vocabulary, a shared idea of a dashboard, shared measurement, right? That we all agree to. Because if you don't have a sense of our own places, and if we don't know what the variables are, how are we going to make better trade-offs? And climate change is finally like the last 50 trillion trade-offs that we made badly, right? So we need to start making better trade-offs. And that's as true for the city as it's true for industry or for anything else. So that is the foundation of our thought and imagination on this. So we have to have a new imagination. It has to be a consensus that we all share across the space. And I mean, if we don't share it, there's no way in hell that citizens and governments and they're going to have this. And I like ending my presentations with this because this is what we're leaving for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. I mean, it's really inspirational to see some of the narratives that you were mentioning, and also, I mean, the thought around. I mean, I do follow the sorry kids thing. I mean, in all of your Twitter messages, and it really resonates a lot of time. Yeah. So I think the important thing is right now in front of us is that while I mean today if you talk to say anyone in a city, I mean starting from the auto driver to anyone, people do recognize that trees are going. There is no trees. Things are not becoming livable, and so on and so forth. But I think while we know that things are not happening in the right fashion, we still don't know how to change it. Okay, or what sort of things we need to do right to change the entire narrative. Of course, there could be a lot of thought process, but I think it would be great to talk about here today some of the enablers that we think will be worth looking as part of the entire this narration of ecological resilience and economic productivity. I think also the thought that ecological resilience comes at the expense of economic productivity or vice versa. But there are a number of case studies that says that it may not be the same case. Okay, so probably it will be great to hear some of your thought around that. Also, in addition to that, I mean, you often say that climate change is not the only problem in life, and there are in fact the Stockholm Resilience Institute shows that there are biodiversity problems, or the biosphere problem is much larger now. There are the green water problem and so on and so forth. So can city becomes a enabler to change some of those narratives?
City's economic problem is a complex one. There are winners who will lose, who will have to wind down a little bit. But there are more losers who will win. Right? When you zoom out at a state scale or a nation scale, there are many more places which actually are losers today on economic parameters. I mean, if Delhi's kids have a lifespan that's going to be 17 years shorter, I don't think we've done the calculation for that, right? I don't think we've done the calculation for the river expanding thrice in the next 10 years, right? The economic loss from that. So I think once we start to do fair accounting on this, I think we'll realize that on the rural side it's fairly easy. the numbers are red all the way. Right? On the urban side, it's a more complex problem, and we have to find the alternative jobs. We have to find the, can our jobs come from, like I keep saying, biology instead of mining?
Thank you. I'll take this opportunity to welcome Madam Tara. She's the Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and ma'am has spearheaded the Amrut mission for the longest time, looking at several sub-components, including water, resilience, fund cities, etc. Also, from your own experience, ma'am, since you've led this program across multiple cities in the country, looking at ecologically sensitive cities, water conservation, etc., we'd like to hear your thoughts also on where you feel this approach of bringing climate and resilience while we are also looking for economic growth. Where do we stand, and what are your thoughts on the same?
First of all, thank and I really appreciate the initiative. I think there's a much needed, always, I mean, there's a much needed dialogue. But the only challenge we all have is how do you approach this? So the right way to approach is to projectify any objective, and that I think probably you have done it, because this is a very broad topic. Balancing economy and ecology is a very broad topic, and in India you have a problem of sometimes pollution is better than starvation. So there needs to be an understanding about Indian economy. If you go and preach to people, itna pollute karo, it won't work. So at the same time, there are certain aspects of intervention which can be taken. Okay, and therefore it is good to have this dialogue, and as many organizations as they get into it, but the dialogue has to be sharp. It has to be meaningful. It has to be relevant, and it cannot be too long-winded. So my take on this or anything is the right thing to do. And a carrying capacity of a region is based on its blue-green infrastructure. How much the region can carry. So there's going to be the breathable air and the drinkable water are going to be the most scarce commodities, not the physical infrastructure otherwise is what we all should avoid. That should not be the case. So therefore it is better to immediately look at the natural resources underlying a city fabric. But again, it will be very impractical to think that we can change the cities to rural like scenarios, and so it will be very impractical to think like that, because the magnitude of cities interfaces, because it's because of its density. So therefore pollution is nothing but dense presence of some toxic molecules. The moment it is spread, it doesn't become pollution. It becomes a tolerable, absorbable thing. So therefore we need to look at how do we build this into program implementation. How do we build this into the conscience of people? How do you build this into so we are doing it in several ways. Like in Amrut, we are saying you regenerate your water bodies. We are listing, we are inventorizing the water bodies. Those things are happening. However, to catch the attention of the people, Honorable Prime Minister has launched this Amrit Sarovar project in the rural. And similarly in urban, we've taken up rejuvenation of water bodies. We ourselves are funding partly 2,000 odd water bodies as a special case to start looking at. But the only problem is, again, we may fund it, but the way it is happening is also matters. So how do we bring in that awareness about that water body becoming a source of water rather than just being cleaned up? So the moment the reliability of the city is on that water body for their water, then the perspective changes. So I think that kind of awareness, that kind of advocacy has to come in. That's the first thing. So we do, I mean, when you work in government in such a large scale, reaching out precisely to even the people who implement becomes a Herculean task. So as many organizations can get in the space, we welcome them to come and have that small gap filling arrangement. Second thing I would say is, it's better to also tell them that you can turn the waste into a resource, especially the polluted drains of a city. How do you make the polluted drains into a resource which can aid in real estate appreciation, in water security angle, and how it can become a social good in terms of giving the community space to interact with each other. I think that is a very, very important measure. So when projects are taken up, you can develop a ecological audit, or if you call it audit, that becomes a very bad word. We can develop a ecology uh, template to look at that project. See, if we say that anything to do with we should not pollute, all that becomes a very, very rhetoric dialogue. It has to be more practical and more nuanced. So therefore, how do you nuance that ecological template for projects? We may not approach all the projects. We can make in these 4 eco-cities regions. I can give you the list of projects. People sitting here and talking, or I sitting there and talking in Nirman Bhavan, or the municipal commissioners, or for that matter even city engineers, they are not the people who are implementing. Instead, the implementers or those cutting edge contractors, can we create a program for them to understand how they are the ecology protectors, instead of calling them? And unfortunately, it's like this, that the person who needs to know is not aware, the person who knows is not implementing. This is the dilemma or the problem we have. Because we all stand in the margins and keep shouting, "Ye hona chahiye, wo hona chahiye," but it doesn't work that way. So you have to get down to that contractor, that fellow who's looking at his, bottom lines. He has to be sensitized about what he's doing, and most of them are definitely, nobody is beyond conscience. I think they will work on it, because once you appeal to their conscience, that you have to be a little careful, and you can achieve what we do. It will save so many people's lives, it will save so many issues, and we can be a little more sensitive. So I think we have to take this to the streets of these cities in a very systematic manner, but not that it is possible easily to go. But then, as you all know, Amrut too has this wealth of details about these eco-city regions. You can analyze and associate and see that what will you bring to the table. Okay. So, for example, instead of taking a new project under this initiative, I would say, I have sanctioned so many projects. They are undergoing tender and this thing. You can pick up those and align your goals with that. That could be a very productive engagement, rather than, everybody doing things in their own siloed way. So kindly look at that possibility, number one. Number two, I would say heat islands and all. If you say heat island effect, if you say, climate resilience, all these are terms which look very good on paper. Very effective communication to the public is the most important. Okay. For example, somebody says this is a red alert. Nobody understands what exactly is red alert, but something rings in the mind. So sometimes we forget the right words to be used. I would say you can call this whole initiative 50 to 30. How do you reduce the heat island effect of 50 to cool it down to 30? Though both are dramatic, but you can name it that way and start looking at those possibilities in a given project. By doing a project, how do you reduce 50 to 30? So that could be the way of looking at that kind of initiative. I guess that we need to really align with the existing work going on, instead of each one multiplying their own projects, because you're getting funding, you're getting some this thing. That doesn't go a long way. I think it's other way around. If you have already taken up a project, you're doing it, let us look at it. But another thing which I want to inform you is, I don't know whether Rajit has told about that. We are incentivizing creating urban forests, riverfronts, and water body rejuvenation and conservation, apart from funding. Like in planning network, if you integrate all the blue green infrastructure into your master plan, we're giving 50 crores per city for 0.5 million plus cities. That's more money than anybody can imagine for that city. So kindly, how do you get that to those cities? There are only, if you look at 5.5 million plus cities, there are only around 5 lakhs. That means you don't have more than 150 cities. Can you create that group and work with them to create this awareness, and work with those projects in these 150 cities to get to what you want to do? You have projects, you have people. We will give you the platform. Will you get into that place and work with them? So that will multiply the efforts rather than getting too piecemeal and getting to this thing. So you have projects, you have people. Can we have capacity building programs like how to rejuvenate a water body? You don't need to spend crores. Sometimes you can even spend a few lakhs to rejuvenate. How do you bring in that interface? How do you make the water body uh, the community interface? How do you make the water body the water resource? How do you make the water body to actually, that everybody knows that, and probably many of us don't know also, that a water body actually doesn't mitigates the heat island effect. I know how many of us may not be knowing this. If you have a water body, the heat island effect of that area of the concrete gets mitigated. But I don't think this is a common knowledge. So how do we bring that to see, for example, that is how we need to look at that. So I think this is very important. We are doing the similar work. I would request that if you can align with it. Sometimes what is happening is everybody is picking up their part, what they know, where they are convenient, and just working. And never imagine you will achieve those skills, come what may. The amount of scale I can provide you as government. So if you can align your efforts towards that, I'll really appreciate it, unless it is not feasible. So that will also help to create some good effect. The third thing is, can we create this thing, an assignment through which we can look at ecological rejuvenation of a city? Which are the areas, what can be done, what cannot be done? Can we give it to, say, we'll select 50 cities and give it to 50 institutions who have ecology as the course, and then let them make a plan for that. They do survey of the whole area. There could be 20-25 students involved under a nodal officer. That can also be funded and taken to that level. These are things which will bring out more stakeholders into that space, bring a lot of conversation around it. And that helps. Apart from that, we can do so many things, but I for now want to say only this much, that see, the intentions are right, the language is right, the noise is right, but then if you don't align with the right forces in right proportions, then you won't have much to speak about. Now, there could be so many things which can happen. We may feel that we are changing something, but if you say change water body in one place, and downstream, if the same water flows to pollute the other, there's somebody else upstream polluting water body, then all your efforts go to for a sex. So I would request that we should look at that way. I think we need to really look at aligning our efforts in a particular direction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. Maybe one or two quick clarifications. The projects we are taking up are funded projects. So the Kalasangin Drain, for example, is under Amrut and Smart City. So they do have funding to do it. So we've entered there. The Srinagar Regional Plan for the entire Kashmir Valley that you saw is a funded project for the state. So there are some we are trying to do at a regional scale, some at a project scale. So we are absolutely aligning. We don't create new projects because that's another uphill task for us if we take on new projects. So we typically align with government intent and finance. So that's been our thing. In terms of students, we just concluded, we had 4 SEP students who are at the thesis level, DRP students, Professor Shashwat students. 4 of them joined us in our 4 cities. So they did their thesis along with us. So we were able to give them the data, the advice, and they've just, I think, graduated now. So we do definitely try to align. We don't, try to act independently because we know how far we can go if we do that. So thank you very much, ma'am. It'd be nice to take a quick round of comments from the panelists. We'd like to hear your thoughts as well.
I'd just like to speak a little bit from the perspective of Chennai and what we are seeing happen in Chennai now. So, Chennai is doing its 3rd master plan visioning exercise, and one of the first steps we took was to review what happened during the 2nd master planning exercise and what were the shortcomings in terms of the parameters that they were not able to meet in terms of ecology or water or sustainability and all of these factors. And So one thing that we do know is that, of course, urbanization is happening, and our visions and our land use planning mechanisms are actually for a much more longer period than at the rate at which urbanization is happening. So we are already outdated the day we begin starting to plan for our cities. And in terms of the systems itself, they're all very interconnected. So our blue system, our green system, our livelihoods, our transportation, they're all interconnected. So is the affordability factor when it comes to it. And something that we should also pay focus on when we talk about eco-cities and eco-city regions is how are we doing our asset mapping? How accessible is that information? How spatial is it for us to understand and educate people? Like you said, ma'am, like educating people about it is very significant. And so what tools and mechanisms can we use to actually create awareness on that topic? And in terms of like growth frameworks, so one thing that we have seen cities do is that we jump right into yellow, red, pink, putting the colors in and just defining what the regions are. But what we don't see is how the cities are growing, what are their growth patterns, what are their trajectories, and how they're impacting our assets. So I think what's also critical to do is bring in all of these steps when it comes to large scale metropolitan planning, and identifying projects within them that can then always have a larger framework to fall upon, so it's multi-scalar in that manner. So just some thoughts that I had on the discussions we were having today. Thank you.
Thank you for organizing this panel. I think it's really a critical discussion to talk about cities in a context where we look beyond the administrative boundaries. So usually in my international work, administrative boundaries determine a lot. For example, we work on climate finance. And so when we raise funding for cities to implement climate resilient projects, then the city wants it to be within its administrative boundary because then it can implement it. And there is logic in that. But now when we look at sustainable and climate resilient urban development, we essentially look at natural ecosystems which don't obey by administrative boundaries. And so it's really a question of how do we now cooperate effectively between different levels. So I'll give you an example which is quite shocking. Metro Manila, which is a city composed, actually metro city composed by more than 10 cities. I don't remember if it's 15 or 17. So has one of the worst transportation systems ever. You can stay in traffic jams really literally for hours. And one of the major reasons for that is that mayors are very powerful in the Philippines. And so mayors do not agree between themselves on how they're going to organize the transportation system. Each one has their own resources, but then they just cannot agree on how to spend it in such a way that the overall system of the Metro Manila becomes efficient. And many such situations we are seeing. So we really need to think about what are creative incentivizing mechanisms are there. And I think the national level here is quite critical to contribute to the ideas of how we can incentivize, for example, different municipalities to work together, the municipal and peri-urban and rural areas. How can we create such groups where they can collaborate? An important point that I see in this realm of urban, peri-urban, rural spaces is actually how do we thoughtfully spread economic opportunities? Because a lot of issues arise precisely from the fact that opportunities lie somewhere and then they are less elsewhere. Typically, in rural areas, people would migrate. If you look at India, often it's not by choice that they migrate, but because they see job opportunities where, for example, because of climate change or other issues, the crops haven't worked as they wanted to, so they need to earn additional money, and they go and settle in cities, and then they migrate, and that creates a lot of challenges for the municipality to manage that flow. So if we looked at how to create additional economic opportunities in these areas, that would offload a little bit the pressure on city. On the other hand, we also see that people settle in peri-urban areas and yet they use municipal services which they don't pay for because they don't pay local tax. So that also creates some challenges at the municipal level. And again, another matter that I'm starting noticing quite prominently. So I work with a number of countries which are quite attractive for tourism for their natural areas. For example, Kyrgyzstan in Central Asia. So they essentially, people will come to visit mountains, and cities are completely out of that tourist circle. So to a good extent, you can see it anywhere else. For example, in Phuket, people go to see natural areas. So there is Phuket town, which has historical buildings and certain attractions, but people would go there quite less. One of the reasons being that cities don't offer that quality experience. You have traffic jams, you have certain infrastructure, but cities themselves do not make it a point to become centers of tourism attraction in addition to those natural areas. So a lot of collaboration and thinking of how economic opportunities could be spread would really be very impactful. And finally, I'd like to come a little bit back to what Samir was saying, which I found very interesting, this discussion on what is the role of cities today? What is the offer they're giving? And this topic may be more relevant than what we think at first glance, because often in any official document I'm seeing, the document starts with the urban population growth. And so the UN really likes this, and they will show how this growth will happen. So as I understand, the methodology for this is just to linearly project the population growth of the previous decades. So now it doesn't really work exactly like this, because today we are in a paradigm where at least qualified people, qualified workforce is really very choosy and picky about where they want to live. So we already see some cities in China, ghost cities, industrial cities, which get abandoned. And we at Unicity really warn cities that if we don't invest in a quality environment where people thrive and not survive, then these cities really literally risk to fall out of economic opportunities in 10, 20, 30 years to come, or become maybe hubs of less qualified people who work at factories, but this is not what is the model, a sustainable model today. So to conclude this thought, there is this concept in India which I like a lot, the concept of ras or juice, that that essence, cultural essence. And this, I feel, in Asian cities we are losing it. I was mentioning this morning that I visited Shillong for the G20 meeting last week, and Shillong has traditional architecture with pointed roofs, which quite fits the local context. But today what happens, because most of these buildings are not protected, because you would probably know in India less than 1% of heritage buildings actually are protected and cannot be demolished. So these buildings get demolished, and what do you build instead? A concrete box that now you see all across India. So this diversity between states, between communities that is there in India totally loses its appearance in the visual identity of cities. And as a result, the cities lose this attractiveness, these economic opportunities that come with the unique aspects of their image. So I think this is something that really would be important to look at in the Indian context, so that these economic opportunities are unlocked. And when people travel, they really delve into the identity of that place, rather than just coming. And then, for example, Agra is a very good example. Everyone visits Taj Mahal, but very few actually want to stay even overnight. Everyone tries to go to Jaipur by the night. And when I was living in India, we talked about it with the municipal corporation, and they were at that time thinking of maybe opening a casino. I'm not sure that was the best strategy, but essentially, yes, offering this holistic experience, not just one monument, but how do you merge yourself with the city, look at the architectural surrounding, and how do we create this today? I think it's a really important point.
I think EcoCity, and as we discussed in the morning, climate is not confined to any administrative boundary. So therefore, climate disasters, these are all, so it is always better that we look at it from a regional context. Now, having said that, I have a small little, point to make. That is that city and a region, or a region, a metropolitan region, or a city region, differs across areas, across geographies, across topographies. So we cannot have a city region. I mean, how do you delineate a city region is one question that we need to look at from the functional aspect of how far that city serves the surrounding areas, how far the surrounding areas serve the city. So first we need to be very, very clear as to what exactly delineates a particular city region, which will differ across cities. The second thing, that now, having said that, the scale then therefore matters. So when we're talking of eco cities, we are also talking on a macro scale. When we talk of planning and urban design, we talk of placemaking, we talk of walkable cities, we talk of the blue green infrastructure and the NBS, the greening of the blues and greening of the grays and things like that. Now that is normally on a micro level, even at the neighborhood level in the city. But when we are talking about city regions, we are looking at a more macro level understanding of the the climate and its impacts. So basically, what I feel is that there we need to look at a horizontal or a synergy, vertical synergy from the macro to the micro, in order to have an ecocity, and also a horizontal synergy. That was a vertical, a horizontal synergy across the administrative divisions. So we have to whosoever is the implementer, however we implement an ecocity concept, we have to have, or we have to connect with the administrative machinery. And therefore we need to have, or we need to actually push for a vertical as well as a horizontal synergy between departments, between ministries, and also between at various levels. So that scalability is something that we are looking about, because when we are talking eco cities, we are talking certain very specific interventions in terms of open spaces, in terms of walkability aspects, in terms of TOD, a transit oriented development. So all these things have to be taken as a I think a comprehensive or a holistic, in a holistic approach. That is what the second point that I was kind of, it came to my mind that when we are talking about eco cities and regions, especially when we are talking development or interventions at a regional scale, we normally look at these, how would you make it, economically sustainable or economically dynamic. Unless the city is economically dynamic, it is very difficult for the city to survive over a long period of time. It stagnates. So how do you balance? So there would be a trade off, and we need to somewhere see where we can meet and sort out the conflicts, the resource conflicts, development conflicts, like you talked about Srinagar. Now Srinagar also, now the cultural mobility was a water based mobility, which over the years, if you look at the number of roads that have come up and having crossed the, or confined the waterways, that is also huge when we look at the Srinagar floods, and that has been one of the prime reasons for the flooding. So therefore, all these things need to come together as at various scales and at various and of various sectors, so that the ecocity approach, which is absolutely rational and absolutely imperative at this point of time that we take up, so that becomes successful. So
I have 3 points to share. I think the very first is what ma'am mentioned we cannot preach. I think that's the most important point, because people have to own the problem and own the solutions as well. So that's the very first point. I'm an urban planner, so we of course we've prepared so many statutory plans, and many of us, Rajat and I, have been involved in many of these plans and projects together. While we discuss issues in our plans, we don't actually frame the problem. We don't penetrate the problem from multiple dimensions. So I think the first aspect is to kind of focus a little bit deeper on the nature of the problem and multiple dimensions of the problem, and highlight in simple words. Ma'am was saying again that the communication has to be simple. So the ownership of the problem needs to become ubiquitous. So how to make that happen in a simple enough way? Because today, for example, some students of mine from Azim Premji University were investigating the problem of traffic congestion. And they went and met with all of the agencies in Bangalore. And they also met with the general public and some other private sector companies like Uber, Ola, etc. And everyone had, they said the problem of congestion is not ours. We're not required to evolve solutions to the problem of congestion. So, it was an ownerless problem in a sense. So I think that came across very strongly, and I feel the context of lakes and tanks in Bangalore is again another classic example. There's such a complex governance mechanism for governance of lakes and tanks that there's minor irrigation department to BDA, BBMP, and both of them are not often quite aligned on who should be actually dealing with the problem. There's BWSSB. Then there's a host of other city level agencies also which are involved. And there's a tank development authority, lake development authority, all multiple authorities. There's about 15 public authorities involved in the governance of lakes and tanks in Bangalore. So there's a lot of ambiguity in the governance space. So ownership of the problem is the first aspect. I think we need to make sure that there's an ecosystem ownership of the problem and ecosystem solutions which have ecosystem ownership of the solutions as well. I think that's the first aspect, which ma'am was saying, not preaching, but collective ownership of problems and solutions. I definitely think that's a most critical thing. The second aspect is about, in relationship to this ownership of problems, if we can think about common outcomes that we're driving at. I think Samir was highlighting this, and we've had many discussions on this in Bangalore as well, that collective understanding or coherence on what are we looking at as values that our cities should represent, and outcomes that we would like to see in our cities. Then we work backwards from those outcomes and define institutional arrangements, regulations, etc., to accomplish those outcomes. And it becomes easier for us to track the transition that we're looking at from condition A to condition B, which is where we want to be with regard to a greener city. So here, partnerships become important. Multiple types of partnership instruments. The problem there is that we have actors with divergent goals and values, again, to bring them all together. So I was highlighting in an earlier session today that there are many specific methods that we're exploring for implementation where coherence can actually be mapped across divergent actors with divergent values and goals, and build collective ownership of the various values that we want to inculcate in our cities. The third is about to explain in a simple way that the problem of urban sprawl is the problem of food security, is the problem of congestion, and the problem of air pollution. I've just been involved with the UNDP on developing training modules for Uttarakhand as well as Madhya Pradesh, where the UNITAR and the UNDP emphasized that they said, don't keep any jargon, keep it simple. And in all the sessions, if you can communicate this much, that the problem of sprawl is it's related to the problem of food security, it's related to that simple, connection across problems is very critical. And so we've actually converted this key message into 10 different sessions. There's foundational sessions and there's multi-sectoral sessions. And in the multi-sectoral sessions, each of the session is actually emphasizing that solutions lie across sectors. Green streets has the stormwater drain issue, solid waste, roads, transport, biodiversity. There's multiple departments, multiple agencies involved in that, in the nature of the solutions. And Rajat, you and I have been involved in Panjim, for instance, where they discarded the green streets idea because it was not because the material specifications we had included were not aligning with the PWD's schedule of rates and their material specifications. So clearly, there's a huge value chain shift that needs to occur. So that was the second point. The last is about data. Any of these problems, because there are multiple sectoral sectors that are involved, both public as well as markets and civil society is a heterogeneous space again. We need to craft specific protocols for data sharing. Data sharing is it doesn't happen automatically. So I think I've been involved with the World Bank, for instance, on an initiative called the City Planning Labs initiative, where the focus was institutional arrangements, people data systems. But in the institutional arrangements part, we've developed very detailed protocols for departments to share data with one another so that cities are not duplicating the production of data and there's economy in the production of data. And that data can be used for conducting data analytics in order to address specific public problems such as frequent flooding or air pollution or any others that are, wicked problems that our cities are facing. So I'll stop there.
Just very quickly, I would like to add here is that while we are talking about, say, ecological restoration, water rejuvenation, and all those things, I think in every problem there is an opportunity. And what I'm trying to say here is that while in the newer market link opportunity where we are talking about carbon credits, where we are talking about payment for ecosystem services, then the voluntary market schemes. I think while cities may not offer such big chunk of rejuvenation activities, but if we look at aggregation of all those smaller opportunities and can put a sort of a valuation system around that, I think it by its own itself it can create a large opportunity to define the case for cities to become either the net zero, follow the net zero commitments, bring newer market linked schemes into the entire rejuvenation market or the restoration market. So I think there is an opportunity. It's just somehow we need to look how things can be aggregated to fulfill such obligations. Yeah.
First of all, I'll just start from what is. I'm exactly saying that. We have put 15,000 crores for the cities to partake if they behave in a particular manner in urban planning, if they behave in a particular manner in restoring, getting ecosystems, master planning done, environmental planning, mobility planning done. So it is 15,000 crores is $2 billion for this year. So there's a document. They have to behave in a particular manner in terms of urban planning, in terms of addressing ecosystems, and we are going to honor them. Last year, we honored them with 4,000 odd crores. We had put 6,000 crores, but they could only prove 4,000. See, one thing is very important. So I'm starting from what you said. It's already done. In fact, we are saying the same thing. There's an opportunity. Let's not preach, let's not give jargons, let's not be on the margins. If you preach and if you do jargons and only theory, then you are on the margins and we will remain on the margins forever. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I think I'll just go from one or the other. I mean, everybody had some points. Some are very nice points. Some are points which I think I would like to react to. First of all, the thing is, sometimes what happens is you're talking about carbon credits. In my own experience of very little probably, but yes, for me it is good enough. I think I've completed 29 years in service now. And I've spent 16 years in urban. Okay. So 16 or 17 years in state. And then here another 4 years. So you can, out of my 29 years, I've been collector of urban district. So that also counted, I think, almost. What I'm trying to say is, we all talk about carbon credits. I'm yet to see a place where we have. So why don't you guys, who are the knowledge sharing people can help a city to formulate that from one of the cities which is doing well. Like I will give you a detail of which cities look very bright and nice. The moment you help do for 1 or 10 cities, then that will become a practice for other cities. This is where people like you can come in. I would like that to happen. Now, coming to the issues of, other issues which have been mentioned. Rajit said 4 students are associate. I'm not talking about that scale at all, Rajit. That scale is absolutely not possible for India to sustain. Okay, that just sustains your organization. It doesn't sustain the activity what I'm talking about. And it is easy to do what I'm saying because now you have technology. So you can do it. I mean, minimum 300 water bodies we took, associated it with 300 institutions and asked the children to visit and make a plan and paid them an honorarium. See, in one blast, we took up 300 culturally important water bodies. There's such beautiful documentation. Immediately you don't see an outcome, but at least these children, students of the colleges who went to that place, looked at the water bodies, spent 4-5 visits or 6 visits, and then drew up a plan, drew up something and exhibited it as this thing. It creates a dot on the chart. This dot could be connected eventually. So that's something which I'm looking at. I'm looking at that kind of thing. If you take 150 cities and give an ecological audit, where are the urban forests? Where are the water drains? Where are the water channels? What is happening? So this you and I cannot do. But the money you have to pay to them is very minimal. Like you need at the most, say 40, 50 lakhs. I'm willing to fund that. But we need to coordinate this and get it through. So that is possible. That is what is possible when you associate with program like ours. When you do, you will have to call 4 people and they will do a thesis. That's fine. I mean, that's knowledge. But it doesn't come into action. We need to get it into action. Those kind of knowledge sharing, if we can do it at a scale, not at very singular digits, that's something which I would be. I think there is a lot of incentives of national government. We are incentivized. See, at the bottom of everything is the capacity. Financial capacity, execution capacity. So what did Amrut do? When we took up 500 cities, these 500 cities for the past 8 years I have spent 72,000 crores. That's around $10 billion. It's not the money which is a problem. It's the execution capacity which is a problem. You give them, I'm telling you, it's not the money. They are not able to absorb the money we are giving. Because there is no absorption capacity. Why there are no absorption capacities? Exactly, that is where we need to intervene and bring out the inefficiencies, correct the inefficiencies. That's where a lot of knowledge sharing and capacity building is required, which doesn't need much of money, but need time and good thoughts and capability of training to go into it. Now, so incentives are being given by national government. India doesn't have a problem of powerful mayors pulling in each direction. India has a different problem. India's aggregator is there. There's a bright state government sitting there. Now that we have put 20,000 crores on the table for just urban planning and urban financial reforms, every state has submitted a roadmap. Around 16 states have submitted a roadmap how they're going to reform their urban planning to the extent we have said in their roadmap to get that 20% money. And they did it in 1 month. Okay. I mean, means they're saying this is the action we are going to take, and we ask them to submit a roadmap. The same thing I preach, I go and tell them moral highness, nothing is going to happen. So Indian national government is incentivizing that behavior and moving them. The way to move them is create that money part, because we can only approach them with the money. And they are being very critically looked at when they are saying we are doing these reforms. I think somebody was saying planning follows development. This enrolled, madam, yeah, I agree. It does happen. This is where the challenge is. We all think that planning should precede development. We are not Europe. We are not US. We are India. You have to board the train at 200 kilometers per hour and repair it. That is the capability and ideas which should come onto the market. It is not going to stop for us. So we need to really change our strategies. The way we are thinking, the way we are looking at. And we are saying Srinagar. Why Srinagar? Look at your own area where you're staying. What I'm trying to say is the challenge is much bigger and much more dynamic than what we all can think together. We need to really look at solutions which will suit that challenge. Our thinking and our if we need to really respond in a very different manner. So the best way to respond is, I think, quick build solutions. See, there could be some imperfections there if we do that, but at least there will be a conversation. There will be a movement. There will be, and it's a right time. I can tell you, national government is fully aligned. Why would national government put just money of 20,000 crores to the cities if they behave in a particular manner? Apart from what we give them as schemes funding. And there is good response. I must tell you, just by initiating this nudge, this time we have said that if you have collected 20% more taxes, we will give you this much money for the 200 cities. And this is about 5,000 crores. If you raise municipal bonds, we are giving 13 crores per 100 crore. Okay. So this is moving cities. It will take, there's a lot of inertia, capacity issues and all. But I can tell you that there is momentum. The momentum has to be aligned and focused. That's all I can say. I think somebody was saying it is the regional. I agree with you, it is regional. But the action has to be precise and local. Otherwise, we will keep looking at these maps on the TVs and screens, but the people involved will be doing what they're doing. So we need to look at their relevance. Like when somebody forms a planners, we can sit with them and say, add all the water bodies. Now, water bodies, how do you add? What is that? By adding, what do you get? Nothing. So we said, you add all the water bodies, you get some money. First, you start the conversation. Here we are not looking at perfect solutions in 2 years that they add the water bodies, they rejuvenate, they clear up. Rejuvenation of water bodies is one of the conversation points for us. It's not the end point we are looking at. We're looking at engaging with them. It's not easy to engage with 4,900 cities by a national government, or for that matter, if we all are in the house and we want to make breakfast with 3 children, asking for 3 different things, it's very difficult. So you have to have something which binds. That is where the money, the schemes come in. They are not we're not giving too much of money in Amrut. We still expect state governments to put in their money. So this, we are giving at the most 30, 35 rupees per 100 rupees of what, or 40 rupees maybe. So therefore the money is comparatively less. Of course, Indian actions are also coordinated. There is rural activism equally for water, Jal Jeevan Mission, but that doesn't talk about water security. In rural, the water security doesn't ring bells, but it ring bells in the peri-urban areas where it is rural, but all the water is being taken. So I think we need to really, what many good points have come about. Madam talked about integration of cities in terms of its culture and not losing the heritage. I agree with you. Indian heritage is very rich, but unless you understand the economic reason why that person is breaking and remaking, and not see, we can have beautiful heritage, but it is somebody's house or somebody's property, right? There's an individual owner. He also has children to educate. He has also got children to get married. And in India, these things are big expenditure. What do? They sell it off. Then somebody else demolishes and builds. The only way to prevent that is to incentivize holding on to that heritage. Now, how do you do that? Not by regulation. You have to put some money into the hands of that person. It should be of meaning to him. So that is another angle which we need to look at. There, the developmental angle, the facilitation angle comes into play, not the regulation angle. It's very easy for us to say, heritage hai, usko break nahi karna chahiye. And I think cultural essence, I agree with you. Cities of India, even today, has a lot of cultural essence. Though there is a lot of mindless construction going on, but that is what is actually to be looked at in terms of how do we talk about the carrying capacity, how the planning can decentralize the satellite towns. Because nobody is shifting to cities because they want to shift. In 2,000 rupees, you can live a comfortable life in a rural area vis-a-vis 20,000 rupees in Delhi. But there is also something attractive. When you are a poor man in your village, you don't get a status. Whereas anonymity is the best attribute which a city gives to a person. That has to be addressed. If you look at it, they say that, Delhi chala gaya. Now that fellow, sometimes it's not always economic hardship, it is social hardship. So it's also that. So how do you actually make the person, and it's going to be, I mean, we cannot have 70% dependent on agriculture and have a country progressing. It won't happen. You need to have like 20% or 30% rest will come into cities, and we need to address that in some manner. And India is per capita energy, or for that matter resource usage of India, is pretty much very less. It's only because of the numbers we come as the third largest emitter of this thing. But that is immaterial now. What is more material is we need to look at our assets, natural assets, and then preserve it. But we need to align our actions for that. And how do we do it quickly? Again, I'm saying there's no time. We need to get into the conversation, action, everything simultaneously. I totally agree with I totally agree with ma'am's suggestion that vertical and horizontal energy synergies. But I must tell you one thing. It's so easy to say that I know so many departments are there and they're not coordinating. This is going to be the way governments are going to work. Okay. It will be, no, how do you, again, I'm putting up a very challenging situation. How do we get them talk the same language outcome? The best way is criticize the outcomes which is happening because of it. Okay. Talk about the conversation. Criticize not from outside, be a part of it. And we need to, it's going to be department wise. The mother is going to cook, the father is going to earn, the child is going to study. None of them are going to, all three of them are not going to do all the three. Okay, similarly departments. But unfortunately, the need of hour is not one department which can do everything. The need of hour is every department does in a coherent manner together. So, and there are human beings there. So, if you think that this is happening only in government, I can tell you this is happening in your university, in your organization, everywhere. This is the order of the day. When you have to act, you have differences. When you have to preach, you don't have differences. So it's very important to understand that somehow as Indians, we have not been team building. We have been becoming leaders. We believe in becoming. The premium is on becoming a leader. The premium is not on acting as a team. So I think organizational behavioral change has to come in terms of building a team within and building a team across. Now, that can be only done when there's a sound political leadership in the cities. I'm not talking about the mayor level. I'm talking about much higher. Because if you want to control the water coming into a city, irrigation, you can never go out of the city and control irrigation department. It has to be a separate department. But how do you work together? That is another question we may have to find answer to. And how do you collaborate? Because many systems have become so complex that sometimes. So how do you make it simple? How do you make it work? That's another big challenge we are all finding. That is why we have come up with, as a national government, we have come up with a outcome-based funding. By ye outcome de do. You do what you want, whoever wants to do it. But we want this outcome. Now then they align. Like today finance, earlier the urban planners were not looked at. Today the finance departments of the states are calling urban planners and conversing. How do we achieve this? How do we get this money? So this is what has to happen. And I think many of your points are very well understood and taken. And I think integration of cities for the value, economic value they get in, I don't think we need to actually create much of thing. In India, you don't need to create promotion of cycling because 30-40% go on cycles. If 30 crore people are cycling, it must be total cycling population of the whole world, right? You just need to give them road space which is isolated for them to safely cycle. There's no need to preach. Even in 45 degrees heat, that is what they can afford and they are cycling. So what are we doing? That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you or me, or we all need to understand the game is going at very fast pace. And the strengths and this thing is not even understood. So we need to understand that. I keep telling people, don't promote cycling. There is no need. There's enough people cycling. We just protect them. So how do you create that awareness? How do you bring in that conscience? And when you go and talk to engineers, आप ये गलती की है, वो गलती की है, हम लोग बोलते हैं, even national government says it. Sometimes no, you have to tell them, you are the people who can change lives of people. So you put them on a higher pedestal. How do you reform a child? By telling you are such a useless child? Or you say you are such a good child, you can do so many things. But do this one thing. So this is where we are using the language of persuasion and incentivization rather than using a language of regulation and criticism. So I think all of us, when we interact with cities, we need to break that ice with them, with the fact that, see, each one sitting here, or for that matter any human being, apart from money, one thing which satiates them is, why do they earn money? They want appreciation from the family, right? Everybody can be brought on that plane of action which we need if we are able to work on the minds which are behind it in a positive manner. I strongly believe that, and that is a much more deeper reform to do than just bringing in knowledge to the table. Because as much knowledge you have, they will have better knowledge. But the problem is, how do you activate that knowledge? Many a times you have to make them feel their worth. So that's what we need to do instead of giving knowledge. So I think we need to look at capacities to think, capacities to relax, capacities to sit back. Only they have the solution. I can tell you this. If they act, solutions will get translated into action. So my request is, we need to look at that way. Because I've seen enough that we sometimes don't understand that, and we are talking some knowledge. No, but you talk to the human. Knowledge can be acquired, but talk to the human. Hone his skills. Like in US and all, in countries abroad, they have good understanding of a human behavior. And they have a very good understanding of leadership styles and what happens in that leadership styles. So I think we can start. Everybody will not reform. We can start with some bright ones and then take it forward. And there are enough people like us who would want to change this world. So I think that makes, you guys are there. You are all wanting to do this. So I mean, what can be better than this time? And otherwise, I think it is going to be multiple actors. It is going to be this rapid pace of urbanization. It is going to be this flooding. It is going to be this. Now, how are you going to, or how am I going to, or how is our team going to get into it, to act and reform? That's the challenge. And for that, you need to become part of that house rather than looking at through a window and saying, oh, ye galat ho raha, ye sahi ho raha. That's something which becomes counterproductive sometimes. Giving knowledge is important. I agree totally. But then to make it get acceptable, I think we also need to give value to them. That's very important. So these are some of the thoughts. I think defining eco-cities is a very important concept. If you can define eco-cities as, I was just thinking as you were talking, as a nice board of saying 50 to 30, 1 to 100. The water bodies are getting cleaned up, the green spaces are getting created, and the air and the temperature is going down. Can we correlate this? See, these two lines can change the way everybody understands the whole game. So I was just thinking, how do we imagine this or put up on a board in the cities? If you can do that in your ecocity regions, this is what we need to do. Or we start doing counting, giving carbon credits to what they're doing. I think we have to be optimistic. This is India. This context is totally different. We are talking about 4,900 cities. Nobody can even imagine that number. And it is anywhere between, we will be looking at 800 million people in the cities in another next 10 years. Nothing more. Because we have not classified real urban areas as urban cities. Right? So that, the urban nature has come into many peri-urban areas, but we still have this thing. But these are going to exist. And one more thing I'll tell you, the larger, the best partners to have is new technologies, small technologies to push. So that also will work. So there has to be knowledge pouring in, there has to be doers coming in, partnerships, and then we walk forward every step towards this. We will achieve. I have a complete hope about it. Thank you so much for this. I got a lot of input about it.
Thank you, ma'am, for your time, your inputs, and very importantly, the insights from the ministry, which is, of course, one of the most biggest players in this space. Thank you very much to our panelists, Manushi, Olga, Savir, Chandrani and Champaka. Thank you very much for coming here. Thank you very much.